Hello and welcome to Talking F1. We are a podcast from Grand Prix Grandstand that does more or less what that title says. We talk about F1. More specifically, we talk about Formula All. That means Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the W Series. I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and today I am joined by my GP Grandstand partner in crime and the recently elected Supreme Chancellor of the F1 fans section of Drive Tribe, Thiemo Albers-Daly. Congratulations, Thiemo, and how are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you, my good underling. How are yourself?
Very well. Thiemo also is the Supreme Chancellor. Is it the same title, Thiemo, of the...
Why not? Can't hurt, can it?
Yeah, so Supreme Chancellor of the F2 and F3 section of Drive Tribe 2. The tribe, I guess, is the best word. And we've also got further motorsport royalty joining us. For the first time on the Talking F1 podcast, I'm delighted to say, is Martin Brundle's successor, Harry Benjamin. How are you, Harry?
I don't think Alex will be too happy about that stuff, but yeah. But you're very kind. I'm doing well, thank you. Not too shabby. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Honoured to be asked.
Oh, no, it's great to have you. Harry, if people don't recognise the face or the voice, has been doing the... can you imagine? I see his face for the ones not listening now. He's absolutely aghast at the idea. Harry works with the Motormouth podcast and he's recently been recruited, headhunted, I don't know, to get into the commentary booth for Porsches, which is why I mentioned the Martin Brundle link. How's that all gone about and how are you finding it?
Yeah, so I've sort of joined the F1 team who run obviously all the support races that support F1, and they've asked me to do some commentary for the Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup for this season. So did the first one a couple of weeks ago, which was Monaco. So a pretty cool one to start off with. Sort of a commentary debut, really. I can't say I've done much commentary before. But yeah, so I was really chuffed to sort of be asked and do that. And I think it went okay. So they haven't binned me off yet. So I'm back for, we've got 2 rounds in Austria coming up in the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be quite intense. So yeah, it's been going all right. And my Motormouth podcast, plodding along as well, week in, week out. We interview some amazing guests and names from here, there and everywhere from the motorsport world. So that's been really great to do. It's always nice to meet people. I think the one we just released was Rick Parfitt Jr., son of a well-known rock star, Rick Parfitt, and also racing in British touring cars as well this year. So it's amazing the kind of characters you come across in motorsport. So yeah, it's been going okay so far.
Yeah, indeed. I've heard of that Nico Rosberg fella that you've interviewed as well.
Oh, yeah, and him.
Might be all right.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I don't know. Paul di Resta was better.
That's a big shout, causing a beef in the Formula 1 world from Motormouth. But people have a look out for that podcast as well. It's well worth a listen. I do need to go through a little bit of housekeeping before we get fully started. And that's just a brief note to say that we love seeing the numbers of you watching. We love seeing the numbers of you listening. And it's brilliant when you get involved in the comments. But I just want a quick request to keep it civil. And we don't want any name calling. Your opinion might be different from ours, and it doesn't mean that our opinion's wrong. It's just different. So if you disagree, love to hear it. That's great. Give some reasons why you disagree, and we'll take those thoughts out. Might even be able to speak about them on the podcast, give everybody a voice, but please refrain from any personal insults. We're just people like your friends and family too. So in fact, consider us your friends, maybe even your family, but consider how you'd speak to those guys, and let's just keep that stuff nice. But anyway, let's get right into talking F1. There's no 2-month breaks this time for Formula 2. Only needed a fortnight to recover from Monaco. We're going to talk about all 3 of those races and probably make one too many VIP jokes after Juri Vips became the first man to become a double winner in this new 3-race format era. And of course, we can't forget Formula 1, where we saw an all too familiar podium of Perez, Vettel and Gasly. We'll also be talking about how both Hamilton and Verstappen led the Azerbaijan Grand Prix and walked away with 0 points because Baku didn't actually welcome all of us this time around like it has in the past. But Formula 2, let's start there, guys. Thiemo, Shwartzman is back in the title race. How good was that to see him win a race and absolutely rocket himself up into the championship fight?
I am claiming all the credit for this because I've been slating him for the last few podcasts, and he's finally listened and he's got his garden gear essentially, and it was great to watch him just absolutely nail it all weekend long. It was just I mean, he's what, third or fourth now in the championship, something considered like this, and I'm just like, it goes what we've been saying up before. You just need the one good weekend, and you're back right up there again. I'm hoping it's not a one-off. I don't want to be a downer immediately. Save that for later. But it was just the reverse pole on the Saturday really helped for this first sprint race, and then second sprint race, decent enough result as well there, and then third was it in the feature race as well. So it's just, I don't know what's changed for him. Maybe it was only the 2 weeks this time, so he could just, maybe the pressure there was better for him if it's a shorter gap. But whatever it was, keep doing it. It was great to see him back.
It absolutely was. I've got a suspicion, Thiemo, that he and Sebastian Vettel might listen to the podcast, as you've been slating both of them, and both of them turn up with a good result.
It's tough love, Jim. It works.
Tough love indeed. Harry, Shwartzman, what have you thought of his season thus far, and how did you rate his Baku weekend?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, he absolutely smashed it in Baku, and that's what he was so in need to do. And we talk about it over and over again. These F2 drivers, they have to shine at every race they go to, because we've got such a short and short season, and then the races are so compact now within one weekend. So, you have one bad race, and that can suddenly spiral. And unfortunately for Shwartzman, that hasn't been going his way. He hasn't been able to be consistent, in the results he's had have not been where he wants them to be, or where, in fact, Ferrari wants to be, or where he should be, because he finished last season, ahead of Nikita Mazepin, who gets the promotion up to F1. Shwartzman has a path to F1 right there for him. He's really highly ranked by Ferrari, and going into his second year, I think everyone thought, well, he's a shoo-in for the title. Surely he's going to be one of the big challenges, and it has not looked that way up until this weekend just gone in Baku. And third in the championship now, that is what he needed. I think I've got that right. So third in the championship, I'm just double checking. Yeah, he is. And then suddenly he's back in the fight, and he's taking the championship fight. So, I mean, couldn't have asked for much more, really, from Shwartzman. A brilliant recovery, and not just a recovery, but an assured drive, showing and reminding everybody of what he can do and why he is one of the drivers who is up there and can fight at the top.
So it would have been quite easy to just see him get the reverse pole win and then just go back to what we've seen for the beginning of the season so far, but he didn't do that. He just stuck with it consistently, and it just clicked for him. So it was great to see it wasn't just a one-off thing.
I think the reverse grid pole, it was just sublime drive, never really threatened for the entire race. But for me, actually, the reverse grid pole means that you're not anywhere near the front in the feature race by its very nature. And he still managed to get that podium, which is really showing that he has the ability, he's got the speed, and it's just something, maybe with the Prima team who now lead the championship as well, something clicked. Piastri, he didn't get the win. He was pushing a little bit, but he had the penalty as well, so the win was unlikely. But yeah, Prima, Piastri, and Shwartzman, what a combination. That is a really strong driver lineup, and I reckon, despite their slow start as a unit, they are going to be the shoo-in for the team's championship once again.
It'd be quite a threat if they all manage to work together sublimely over the course of a weekend. It's almost, you don't want to be on one of the other teams at that point. Like, oh dear.
No, but we did see one of the teams that were really strong, and that was High Tech, who got a 1-2 in qualifying, and a big round of applause for that. I wasn't surprised, because we've seen both Lawson and Vips do well this season and then get completely told off and screwed over by steward decisions. And Lawson may still feel a little bit hard done to by the 10-second penalty that he got. And I do want to talk about your thoughts on that. But let's congratulate the VIP. And that's probably one too many VIP jokes already. Vips, who is the first F2 triple race weekend winner. That's easy to say. Harry, Vips, he's now also the championship fight. How good was his wins?
Oh, so, I mean, welcome to the party, Juri Vips. About bloody time, because, he came in again, another highly ranked junior, part of that Red Bull program as well, and had a rough 2020 as well, because I think he was supposed to go to Japan, wasn't he? And then that didn't work out because of the pandemic, and suddenly he's not racing. And then he gets, a sort of a one-off drive in F2, and then that progresses into more and more. But this was, almost a bit, I don't want to say a reset, but this was like, okay, you've had, it's not your fault what's happened in the last couple of years, pandemic, COVID. No, here's your full shot at it now. This is what you can show. You've got a couple of other juniors to go up against as well. And he was shown up completely, not his fault at all, because he was so, I think out of everybody, I hate talking about luck in motorsport, because you make your own kind of luck, I believe, but also you are, especially in Formula 2, you're at the mercy of the other driver sometimes, or a lot of the time. And Vips has sadly, started from the back in Bahrain and just struggled to get those results. So again, a bit like Shwartzman, he finally turned up in Baku, where we saw a lot of people make mistakes. And actually, I think they said this in commentary as well. We saw a lot of Baku was a place where if you were going to be at the back, or if you are at the back, either through pace or through bad luck, Baku's the place where out of anywhere you're going to have the most amount of opportunity, because there are lots of corners that can come a cropper for some drivers, and also there's the toe and the slipstream effect as well. And so we saw a couple of, obviously, I think it was Verschoor and Beckman up there as well, fighting, who aren't always at the front. But Vips managed to also make that claim. But he has got the pace to be up there as well. And he showed that he wasn't there on fluke, and he was there. And being the first person this year to get 2 wins under his belt, I mean, that says it all, I think.
I was going to say, if Monaco's the street track to test you out in terms of just being able to survive the narrowness of it, Baku is the one to test it out. You can overtake in these areas, and not all of them in places where you might necessarily think. And it's a good way of testing you out in a different way. And it really shows that you're saying about luck. If, like, Shwartzman and Vips had only had the one decent result over the weekend as opposed to the multiple ones that they had, then you'd say, okay, that's a bit of luck. But the consistency and just capitalizing on all the opportunities, it shows that there is the skill there to back up the luck for when the luck isn't there.
Yeah, Vips showed he had the skill by getting the front row start, I thought, and then he had to grab the win, didn't he, with that sprint race 2, where was it Beckman that you had to overtake for the lead, and did so. Good to see as well.
He had to fight for it. It wasn't just a straight lights to flag, and he showed that he can do both.
He really can. And yeah, I do want to have a little shout out to Beckman as well, who quietly manages second podium of the season without much fanfare, but great to see. And Bent Viscal, who, both of them probably in cars that wouldn't stay as high as they did, and both of them did stay pretty much at the sharp end. So round of applause for those guys. But let's talk about the other high tech of Liam Lawson, who's had a roller coaster weekend where it started so well. He got pole position fairly convincingly as well, I may add. He was about 10th and a half, I think, ahead of Vips, and then it just unraveled. He didn't walk away with a podium. He didn't walk away with a win. He probably expected to get at least one of those. Thiemo, where did it all go wrong?
Sprint race 1, to be honest. It just didn't improve from there, really, did it? I mean, he was straight out there, more or less. I'm just trying to get it straight in my head. Was that you didn't get the penalty until the following race, was it?
He had he hit the wall at the second corner of sprint race 1, didn't he? He was
already buggered on the first one, and then if there's any chance of getting on the second, it didn't really materialise for him. And then getting the penalty on top of that was just adding insult to injury, really. And it was just, I mean, we'll talk about the penalties in a bit, but even if it had been a lesser penalty, I don't think it would have made as big a difference as any of us, including him, would have liked, unfortunately. So it just, like you say, one bad weekend can just change everything a bit.
I don't want to say it, but it was kind of like roles reversed in a way with Juri Vips, in terms of Juri's had a rubbish start to the year. Lawson, conversely, compared to Vips, has not, and so it kind of a bit of it's not karma because he hasn't done anything wrong. But this is Formula 2. This is how it works. Lawson was, I think the penalty was probably slightly harsh, but he he again, he looked to have the pace at least, but it didn't work out for him. And that's the thing we see time and time again with Formula 2. You can have the pace, but you have got to put it all together. I mean, look at our championship leader, Zhao. Like, what, you wouldn't think based off watching Baku that he was the leader of the championship. He wasn't driving like one.
No, I think the thing with Guan Yu Zhou, though, is that he had the hurry up message, which was kind of hilarious, wasn't it, from his engineer? Just drive faster. But we look at him, and maybe it's just because we hold him to a higher standard because he's championship leader, third season, all the other stuff that we've mentioned several times. But he got a podium across the weekend, and we're still saying, oh, what a bad weekend it was for him. And who knows how well he may or may not have done if not for this weird, we were talking about the throttle map last time with Lawson. This throttle issue just got
that was
stuck.
the only way it could have got worse from this weekend if that happened to him again.
yeah, it really could have. But for Zhou, that was such a bizarre incident which ticked him out. And I don't know if anyone's picked up on this, but I saw the irony because Ticktum did so well in that first race. We'll talk about that as well. And then I don't know if any of you saw this, but Zhou put a funny tweet out to say "slow down" to Ticktum, and then the irony was that Zhou took Ticktum out on the very next race by accelerating right up his rear end. And unfortunate, but for us as spectators, championship well and truly alive. Zhou's championship lead completely chomped out. Piastri and Zhou completely leading the way for the Alpine Academy. Is it a 2-horse race, or is that way too premature to say, Harry?
Oh, I mean, if you get a feel for anybody on the grid, you kind of have to feel a bit for Christian Lundgaard and his season. The other Alpine member, and I can't. It's hard to watch because it's not his fault, and we know he's quick, and it's just not happening for him. And how many points did he score over the weekend in the end? 2. I know championships can change very quickly, but he's got a long way to go, especially in this short season. And so to come to answer your question, I think it is a 2-horse race between Zhou and Piastri. And Piastri himself didn't have the best, his best showing, I suppose. So it still managed to get a podium away from it. But yeah, it is Zhou and Piastri leading the way for sure, because I don't know what's happened to Lundgaard, but they need to enter, if they haven't already, crisis mode, because that is not on for him, for Alpine, and for his prospects.
I think this weekend was good for the championship. To politely disagree with you there completely, Harry. Just because it showed that you have one kind of role reversal weekend for all the main players, and people who you thought were going to be main players are suddenly coming into it then finally, like Shwartzman. Shows that it can all change in a second. And I mean, Zhou does have still a decent enough lead, but at the same time, it's a lot less than it was last time. And you only need another one of these kind of weekends where, Zhou could get on the podium again, but if it's only a 3rd place or a 2nd place and Shwartzman gets another win and Vips does what Vips has been doing and a couple of other people do similar, then it's all going to get very tight very quickly. And I think Silverstone is going to be interesting to see how that impacts it, because I feel like even if Zhou does end up winning it, I could see Piastri or 1 or 2 other people at least being temporarily at the top of the table.
Do you really think Lundgaard could come back for a title challenge?
You never know.
Fair,
Formula 2.
I know, but there's yeah. Well, I don't. I'm not going to say anything and be rude by it, but I will eat my hat.
Wouldn't that be a great story, though?
Oh yeah.
We all want it for him.
I think Lundgaard is out personally, but I don't think it's from any of his own. I don't think it's from his own fault. It's not from particularly poor drives. It's been misfortune, crashes, engine issues that we saw in Monaco. I think the unforgiving nature of this sport, though, by the end of the season, it's not like those head honchos at Alpine will be thinking, oh, you were unlucky, Piastri won the championship, we're going to promote you. It's just not how it's going to work. So maybe he could make a 3rd season. We've seen Zhou have that, and maybe they'll give the benefit to Lundgaard too.
If it was the if you didn't think that Lundgaard had any talent behind him, then you'd think, oh, they'd just get rid of him after the season if it continues like this. But a bit like we've been saying, it's not really his fault what's been happening to us. Just a lot of stuff happens to him. There's bugger all they can do about it. So I think that's the make or break thing. He's proved himself enough before to show that when you give me a car that doesn't stop or split oil around the place or I don't get driven into, then I'm actually pretty good. But I just need that to happen for one damn weekend so I can prove myself again.
We've seen Jacob, who is our usual regular on the podcast as well. He did say how one weekend can turn a championship around, as Shwartzman has demonstrated this weekend. So maybe at Silverstone, we'll have Lundgaard win the feature race, maybe do a double or even a triple. And all of a sudden, I don't know if he could lead the championship with that amount of points, but right back in the fight. Another championship possible contender. Dan Ticktum had a solid weekend, I thought. Enjoyed his usual Dan Ticktum. I say usual. I've been complimenting him recently about maturing and been taking the blame at the Monaco when he crashed out. And he didn't want to take the blame and had an even more hilarious radio communication than Joe when he was entering the pits on his slowdown lap on the feature race, where his engineer kept trying to make him shut up and he kept on complaining about his penalty. But in sprint race one, he was a man on a mission, overtaking what seemed to be the entirety of the field on his way to a podium. Harry, Dan Ticktum, your thoughts on him, both as a driver with a spotted career, but also the new Dan Ticktum of 2021, who's looking for a F1 drive for 2022.
He nearly had the perfect weekend, nearly. And I, in terms of both on a racing side and also on a reputation side, I would actually suggest as well, because Dan Ticktum is a bit, I think, is in terms of the fans and is a little bit, he loves to, he says he doesn't really have that much of a filter, which we're all for. So that's brilliant on one side of things, and I thought he showed maturity and an assured drive, apart from the incident with which sent Thiemo Albers-Daly and then Marcus Armstrong into the wall. I thought that was a bit. I thought that for me undid a lot of the good work he had done up until that point personally, because he clearly had the speed, he had the pace, and it was a really good result for him. What was it? 2nd, 6th, and 8th. That's a good, consistent, big point scoring throughout the weekend. That's what we know from this year. You're not always going to be on the podium, but you've always got to be scoring points, and that was a good weekend by those standards. But he could have had more, especially in that final race. And I think it is a street circuit, and you are racing in Formula 2, so no one's going to give an inch. I don't think when it comes to that incident, for me personally, because that's the thing that stuck most in my mind, he didn't need to do it then. He had the pace, and he could have got them down the straight. He could have had a more mature thought about it, because I think he was he wanted to get by both of them. He was on a roll, and he thought, I'll take 2 into 1 at a corner where you cannot go 3 into 1, and where Marcus Armstrong is definitely not going to be seeing you because he was on the outside going in. And then Thiemo Albers-Daly, what's he going to do? He's got to turn in at some point, hasn't he? So it was a good, strong weekend, apart from that point, which unfortunately for me undid a bit. But I'm hoping if that's the last of the small incidents he has, and then he learns from that and takes it forward, then I think we could see a really strong second half of the year for Dan Ticktum, because he said already that this is his last chance, he thinks, to really make a case to have a Formula 1 seat next year.
I think this is the perfect reason why he's not going to get a Formula 1 year. It's like you say, like he had a strong first race, and it was, because again, he's a bit mustard kind of character. You either love him or you hate him, but if you're doing well on track, then it doesn't matter your personal feelings about the person, because they're doing a decent job, and you've got to respect that. And the first sprint race did a great job of that. And if he'd been able to keep it in that mindset for the whole weekend, regardless of everything that happened, then maybe I'd be a bit nicer right now. But I mean, Jim knows I'm never one to be controversial, but I think the incident with Albers-Daly and Armstrong, it's the kind of thing where, again, didn't need to do it there. It's a long track. There's plenty of other places where you can get the move in, and it wasn't like it was a last lap kind of thing. where it's just like, well, I need to get up a bit more because I've not had a great race where there's still plenty of time for it. And when you think of like Marcus Armstrong, poor sod's not having a great season as it is, and this definitely doesn't help it. And Pourchaire it kind of came from too far back, and it was the kind of thing of people myself, the old Senna thing, if you don't go for a gap, it no longer exists and all that. But it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean every damn gap, especially when you're not a rookie. It's the thing that I appreciate that, yeah, you might learn from it and not make those mistakes again in the future, but at the same time, he shouldn't be making them in the first place because it's not like it's his first go at this rodeo. So it's the kind of thing that's like, yeah, he's one of those drivers where there's a lot of potential there, but I don't think, I mean, again, ideal world that all the best drivers get into F1 when we know that's not the case, but in that kind of world where that does happen, I feel like he's just not quite there on the line because, again, it's just, you need that all sharp roundness, and he's come into 2021 with this new team and new kind of outlook and everything. But there's still the old traces of him there, which are just going to be as undoing, I think.
I am still unsure with Ticktum. He's got so much speed. It's clear this weekend showed just how much speed he's got. It's the patience which just seemed to be lacking. And funnily enough, through a source, I guess, I saw an unseen angle of that Armstrong incident, and Armstrong did turn in pretty damn early. But Harry, you're completely right that Armstrong didn't know. How could you know, unless he's concentrating on his mirrors the entire time, that Ticktum was going to be on the inside? He'd be aware of Pourchaire, but Ticktum, no. And if Ticktum wasn't there, then turning in as he did, probably both cars could have got through that corner. As it was his undoing, and unlucky maybe. It's difficult. This is why we watch F2. This is why we're expecting Baku to give these sorts of crazy results and cars in the barriers after all. So I don't know if I've been debating this, and I don't know if the 10-second penalty for Ticktum was too harsh or not. I just thought it was consistent with the other penalties that we saw. And I mean, was there a driver not under investigation this weekend? At some point, it looked like every single one of the drivers had an orange little exclamation mark next to their names. But in terms of these early race incidents, we saw Lawson it was in the feature race because he was defending off the line, or off the first corner, should I say, with a very aggressive defensive move on Pourchaire. 10-second penalty. We saw Drugovich, and he took out Lawson, I think it was, wasn't it, by inadvertently with Piastri. 10-second penalty. And then the consistency, which we all clamour for, was that Ticktum had inadvertently taken out Armstrong from the race, so 10-second penalty. But I don't know if all three of those are actually too harsh. 10 seconds is one of those weird ones. If you look at the list of penalties, a stop-go, the worst, a drive-through, second worst, 10 seconds there, it's pretty harsh. And the 5-second penalty, which Ticktum's initially was, I believe, that is, 5-10 seconds, that's a yellow card, really, isn't it? Rather than the second yellow card.
I was going to say the only one for me on that one that when it was initially just a 5-second one for Ticktum, that was the only one I thought, oh really? Now you're deciding to be nice about it? And then they went 10-second. I thought, if there's of the three that you're saying, that I think that was the most deserved one there, because it was, you took out two cars. It makes sense on that perspective, 5 seconds for each, because okay, you may not have meant to do it, but it'd be kind of bad if you did at the same time. So you should be getting a lot worse if you were trying to take them both out. And for an experienced driver, I don't have too much of a problem with that. But the other ones, I just thought, okay, that is a bit too harsh. Like, okay, the racing on into the first corner and the defensive move, maybe a bit too defensive, but 10 seconds was just a bit like, come on, we want to make sure that we get to see this kind of racing in the future. And 10 seconds, they're not going to risk that in the future then at all. And then you just have potentially boring racing, and we don't want that either. So I just thought it was consistent, but it just didn't sit right.
It's at odds with each other, isn't it? Because it's that we want the drivers to have the first lap, and the stewards even say they're going to have the first lap and be a bit more lenient, and then they're slapping 10-second penalties out like it's going out of business. I do want to talk about before the race that we saw the return of Nannini, who seems to be enjoying the seesaw effect in Formula 2. Unfortunately, that was at the cost of Petikov, who had a fairly anonymous Formula 2 campaign so far. So Nannini back, I don't know for how long. It wasn't a great weekend for him, but it's a dual campaign, F3 and F2, Harry. Are we expecting to see Nannini enjoy F2, or would you have actually said, let's just stick to F3, mate?
I mean, I'm torn because I do think if you've got it and you can do it, why not? You know, more track time, the better. But also, you think, is it better to have to focus all your energies on one and make sure you have a really good season? It's almost like he's trying to fast forward his career a little bit. I'll do two at the same time and then I'll be in F1 quicker, or then I'll go to wherever quicker. So yeah, I'm in 2 months. It wasn't a bad weekend coming in, you know, fresh with new team as well. Campos and Boschon did a great job for them this weekend, I thought, as well. So coming in, you know, with having missed one race, obviously, but or one round. But yeah, I personally would probably say focus on one, but then again, it comes back to, if you've got it, why not? You know, if it's not going to do him any harm, then, and if he's happy jumping in and out of these two different cars, then, you know, it's more track time for him. It's more experience for him. And then what, but my question is, what happens at the end of this? You know, does he then just focus on Formula 2? You know, what happens if the F3 campaign doesn't go very well?
So it's all going to be stuck in Formula 3 then, isn't it? So
yeah, so, you know, he's kind of, it's a risky move, I would say. But he's clearly desperate to do this because he's come back to do it. So he clearly wants to do both.
If I could, I would. I think that's the fairest way to say it. But I don't have that kind of financial backing, although I'm sure that I have the ability. But we just we'll never know. So I can say that with complete confidence. Yeah, so Campos is where Ralph Boschung was as well, Nannini's new teammate. And you alluded to it, Harry, that he's had a terrific couple of races now, a couple of rounds, should I say, make the same mistake as you, that 6 races in a row, and he's scored points at 5, been taken out in one of the other races where I'm certain he could have scored a decent haul of points as well. His best feature race finish this round as well. He's really, I've got a soft spot, and I want to wear the cap of the Ralph Boschung fan club leader, because I've got the soft spot. It might be the Brit in me that I want the underdog to do well. And I'm not saying Ralph's not talented, but when you're driving in the Campos, I'm not expecting him to go and win the championship. And that's with no disrespect to Campos or himself. It's more from the fact that he is a driver that's had to, I'm not saying that other drivers haven't, but he's a driver which he's been quite open about how he's had to fight to be there, looking for sponsorship, not just be a racing driver like, say, the Alpine Academy or the Ferrari Academy or the Red Bull Juniors, who have everything given to them. They have to justify it, of course, but Ralph's had to be the businessman, like Felipe Drugovich when we interviewed him in the grandstand. He has to go around and get that sponsorship. He had to hassle and hustle for it. And the fact that he's showing this season, which I don't know if it'll be last season in F2 or not, but he's showing this season after a bit of a stop-start career so far, that he has as much talent as the other front runners in these last 2 rounds. So good to see. So long may that continue. Another driver let's talk about as well is Jehan Daruvala, who we're talking about consistent point scoring. Thiemo Daruvala, very consistent this weekend. He's got another podium to go with his previous one in Bahrain. He's not been winning the races, but we always say consistency is key in Formula 2. You don't get more consistent than getting 3 point scoring races in a weekend.
No, it was quite a nice performance from him. I mean, like you say, he's not been winning races so far this season. Well, no, sorry, Bahrain did, but it's been a bit quiet since then, and Monaco was a bit forgetful for him. But it was just kind of this quiet, under the radar, doing what he needs to do to keep himself at least in the fight for a bit longer. I don't think he's gonna win the championship, but I think he's got it in for a top 5 finish at the moment if he keeps doing this kind of thing. A sneaky little podium here and there when it's not necessarily going brilliantly for you helps a lot. And I just think it's, again, the consistency is key. And if If you're a Red Bull senior person looking at someone to bring in, you're looking for this kind of star driver to back up someone stronger, then he's kind of ticking all the boxes for that, which is not a bad thing in itself, because you'll still bring home the points at the end of the day, and you'll still get some nice stuff to put in your trophy cabinet for it. So he's proving that he, even when it's not going too well, he can still deliver, and that's a very important quality.
Now, Harry, we had a previous podcast just last week where we were talking about the driver academies, and the consensus at that point was that Red Bull aren't the strongest that they've been before. Jehan, of course, is part of the Red Bull junior team. Where do you see him settling in the current junior team drivers? He's got Vips and Lawson, of course, there as well. How do you think Red Bull are looking at the moment for their junior drivers? Because there's no guarantee that Gasly or Tsunoda will be in AlphaTauri next year.
No, absolutely. And he'll be all too aware, of course, that his teammate last year did get the promotion to F1 in the form of Tsunoda after, only a year in Formula 2 in his first year. So that's going to be pressure weighing on himself for this year. And the fact that Vips especially now and Lawson have come in and shown that they are not, going to sit behind Daruvula, and Daruvula should have probably been a bit more on top of them from the start. But then again, this is Formula 2 and you don't always make your own luck, But I think Daruvula, if he can have another, Baku was a great comeback drive for him after Monaco. So he needed this. And I think if he can carry that momentum through to Silverstone, into Monza, and in the second half of the year, I think he's got a real shot at it, actually, because he's not an erratic driver. He's, as you say, teammate, it's very, consistency is so key, and I hate myself for saying that so many bloody times, but it's true. And in the form of Daruvula, you've got this young kid, also very marketable as well. If they bring him in, he'll be the third ever Indian Formula One driver as well. I know Karun Chandok has a lot to do with his career and has done in the past to bring him up the ranks. So I think he's got a good team around him. He needs to carry this momentum through now and start challenging for regular podiums and wins in order to make a proper claim for a seat in Formula One, especially at the AlphaTauri team. Because, as you say, is Gasly going to stay another year? Can he stay another year? Where else does he go? And Tsunoda, I reckon they'll probably keep Tsunoda because they won't bin him off just yet. But he's also got Vips and Lawson to contend with, who are going to be eyeing up that seat as well. So Red Bull as cutthroat as ever. So, but Daruvula, in my mind, is good, and he has got the pedigree. He just needs that consistency.
I think an amusing but interesting kind of segue into the F1 stuff in a minute is that with Red Bull as well, the podium for F1 this weekend was all Red Bull or ex-Red Bull drivers. But the amusing thing for me was the fact that the winner was not a Red Bull junior driver in any way, shape or form. And you just think, yeah, it's really working out for you, that program, isn't it?
It's a good segue, though. And I think it really does highlight, we're slightly disparaging possibly on Red Bull's current junior team lineup last time out. But it really highlights how important they are for our sport. I think about a third of the Formula One drivers right now are F1 drivers. F1 drivers, of course, yeah. Are F1 drivers and Red Bull junior or Red Bull affiliated drivers. And the podium, you quite rightly say, Vettel, of course, is a golden boy for Red Bull, even if he's not these days, and Verstappen is. Verstappen was likely to take the win, and we're going to speak all about that. So in one regard, if Verstappen hadn't had that tyre failure, and that was the top four, it would have been a 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Red Bull affiliated drivers. And
people moan about Mercedes dominance, honestly.
Yeah, but let's go into F1. There's no other place to start, Harry, than Pirelli and exploding or failing tyres. It's not the first time we've seen dramatic Pirelli failures on the long straight airstrip, motorway of Baku. It goes on for a long time. The cars generate a huge amount of downforce going at such high speeds. Of course, then the tyres themselves are revolving at extremely high. I don't know what even it would be, what sort of RPM they'd be getting to. And the Pirellis didn't handle it this time around. Very dangerous. I've seen Nico Rosberg, your best friend, mention that if Verstappen had gone left instead of right in that failing, which he has very little control of. He's going to be going into a perpendicular wall in the face of the pit wall, and the pit entry could have been awful. Pirelli have got a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's not on what happened as well, and that shouldn't be happening. That blatantly obvious there. Pirelli have fought back and said they will obviously investigate it. They're quick to claim that it was debris that caused the tyre malfunctions, both of which were on the rear left for Verstappen and obviously Lance Stroll, which brought out the initial safety car. And then I believe they said in the red flag period, after that brilliant message from the Red Bull pits garage to the FIA saying, I think we need to have a red flag to get everybody off these tyres. They looked at Hamilton's rear left and found a deep cut, and that's what they looked at that and thought, well, it hasn't done any constructive damage or damage to the construction of the tire, and so therefore the tire hasn't failed, but they think that's why it was a debris issue. Of course, the drivers think completely opposite, throwing the blame at Pirelli. So I think it's really difficult at the moment, because at the moment of these tire failures, both for Stroll and Verstappen, both of those tires were well within their working life. Yes, Stroll was going long, and Verstappen, they were both those tires both had at least 10 more laps before they were getting to the end of their life, according to Pirelli and according to the data from the practice runs as well. So it's a very complicated subject. I am wary to throw the blame all on Pirelli just yet, because it was just those two cars that had the failure. Yes, on the highest speed part of the circuit, so incredibly scary. And as Rosberg does point out, Verstappen had gone that other way, but ifs, buts, and maybes. So that didn't happen. So that's just I think a Rosberg wanting to dramatize things, but it is, no matter what, it is a dangerous situation to be in, and there'll have to be questions that have been raised, and Pirelli will have to come up with some answers. They've brought in bigger, heavier tires this year to be able to deal with the downforce that these cars generates now and the speed that they get to, and none of the drivers like the tires. Pirelli, this is not the first time either, but that's their problem. They've got bad rep for this kind of thing. I even think back we saw it obviously last year, famously at Silverstone. I think back to 2013 as well at Silverstone, where we had a lot of tyre failure blowouts, and they actually changed the compound of tyre midway through the season, which then saw a lot of teams jump up the order and fall down the order. So they're going to have to think very hard before they make any hasty decisions. We're not going to see this kind of track and speeds again, where these I think the same tyre location is going to be used in Sochi and I forget where the other place is now, but there's
possibly
two more
Saudi,
races. Possibly Saudi, where I don't think. Dhabi. Yeah, Abu Dhabi. Yeah, well, I don't think they can get maybe on that, maybe in Russia, but they're not reaching the same speed as they would be on that straight as in Baku. So it looks unlikely that that's going to happen again. And we haven't seen anything like this before this season in such a dramatic fashion. So as you can probably tell, I'm bandying around the subject because I don't want to put all the blame on Pirelli until we hear more from it. But I think there is more to it than what we're saying as if it's all Pirelli's fault. That's just my opinion.
Can I just say that you had the most British reaction to such a serious issue, though? It's not on that.
It's not on. It's just not on.
Now, the one thing we could be very thankful for, well, the two things we can be thankful for, that nobody was hurt, most crucially. In fact, Verstappen wanted to demonstrate how unhurt he was by kicking said tyre after he got out of the car in very Max.
It would have been awkward if he'd sprained an ankle there or something else in this next race.
Damn it, Pirelli, you keep hurting me. But it was the necessary spice to what I thought was turning into a very lackluster race, where the commentators, I was listening on the Pit Lane channel, and Sam Collins repeatedly mentioned how this is Azerbaijan, we will get safety cars. And until the Pirellis decided to give up, it looked like it could have been a bit of a procession. I remember, was it 2016, our inaugural race, and F2 went or GP2 as it's called back then, went absolutely bonkers. Everyone got excited for F1, and it was a bit of a non-starter. And it looked like, aside from some pit lane overtakes, which I don't want Formula One to go back into those days where the lead is taken or Verstappen can win from Hamilton from pit stops. I want to see the overtakes on track. But I was worried at one point that this is going to be a real snooze fest, and then a safety car was required. It could have been done in a car breaking down on the straight rather than putting Lance Stroll's life at risk. Yeah, technically, yeah. But that did give us this great action. So safety car restart 1. We saw Vettel come out of nowhere, the old Vettel back, taking 2 places and being very, very fighty. And then let's talk about Lewis Hamilton, red flag, standing restart. And my God, was I happy to hear the news it was a standing restart. I was, thought it could be red flagged, race over, 75% done. And then it was a sprint race. We were meant to have a first sprint race in Silverstone, and we had a advanced sprint race, and drama. Gasly versus Leclerc, Vettel getting a podium, Hamilton going straight on. Harry Benjamin is a 7-time world champion who lost his magic.
I want reverse races and sprint races, please, to happen every week, because that was so much fun and so much entertainment, and that's why they did it. That's why they did the restart, because they're here to. F1 is an entertainment platform, and it's becoming more and more that way, and they know that's how they appeal to mass audiences. And with 3 laps did we get in the end of the actual green flag action, I think that was just what Baku needed to make that race slightly more interesting after that poor start before we got those tyre failures. But yeah, I mean, I think Mark Webber on the Channel 4 Formula One commentary summed it up best with his scream as Hamilton locked up and went straight on.
It was a noise I've never heard from before.
Yeah.
It can't be Webber, surely.
It's absolutely brilliant. If you can cut in a clip of it, Jim, it's just absolutely fabulous.
Hamilton takes it away, but he locks on and he's lost it.
The highest pitch thing I've ever heard, and it was great for the championship because neither of the contenders scored points, and that was the big worry. We all thought, this is just another. Hamilton is the best Formula One driver, certainly on the grid at the moment, and certainly it will go down as the best in history for sure. But he often does. If we come back to that L word, luck, if a bad weekend, I take Imola, for example, he got lucky with that one. No way would he have finished on the podium if they hadn't have restarted the race. So that way. So, and he was able to claw back a lap. So, he finally got, he had a bit of Bottas's luck, I think, in terms of not having any, and it made for an exciting race. And we saw that brilliant podium, which I don't think anybody would be unhappy about, with obviously Checo Perez taking the win. And actually people saying, he did inherit that win essentially from Verstappen. And yes, Verstappen probably would have taken that home to win. But if
still could have lost it at the start of the restart, couldn't he?
Well, exactly. And well, he was going to be on the back foot if Hamilton had made the corner, because Hamilton had the inside line and was slightly ahead. But also Perez, if he hadn't have had the slow pit stop initially as well, I think he lost a good just over 2 seconds of that, which would have put him very much side by side, if not slightly ahead of Verstappen coming out of the pits. So that would have been a fierce battle. Whether that would have been allowed to happen, we don't know, and we'll never know. But
multi-21, Max.
But either way, I mean, what Perez, everyone said it. I'll give me 5 races and then see where I am. And what does he do on the 6th race? He goes and wins the thing. I mean, absolutely fabulous for those. I mean, those last 3 laps really made up for what was actually a bit of a disappointing Baku.
And he's the only racing driver to win 2 races in the hybrid era with 2 different teams, which is just bonkers when you think about it.
Crazy stat indeed. But yeah, Thiemo, we saw briefly, I think we could all bow down to Perez, and fortunate, but you mentioned, Harry, that Lewis Hamilton's been fortunate how many times. I can't say Perez is a bad driver because he inherited the win. It's not like Lewis Hamilton hasn't inherited some wins in his time as well. And great to see. And it's a thing I realized actually this morning, that this was the first time since Monaco 2018 when Verstappen had to congratulate a teammate for winning a race. And this kid's 23 years old. So it shows you how much of a wonder kid he was. So yeah, great to see. But Thiemo, I think you might have to go record on repeat here. Bottas, what a woeful weekend and race for him.
Yeah, I was thinking whilst I was watching the last bits of the race coming to an end there, where it's like Hamilton, yeah, he's down at the back, but at least he tried something. It was kind of like, okay, he made a mistake, rare as it is, but he tried for it. He didn't think he went against his own radio message from beforehand, where saying it's a marathon, not a sprint. But at least he tried something, and I'd rather try something and fail miserably at it rather than to not bother in the first place. Which, I mean, not that Bottas isn't bothered to it, but you've got to think you're in a Mercedes, and this is the second time this season we've seen you down in traffic. And I mean, going back to him, Lewis was in traffic too and managed to carve his way up there nicely. So what is Bottas' excuse for the entire race as well? Never mind the restart where you've got a perfect opportunity to make some places up. And you've just got George Russell there in the background, just thinking, yeah, come on, a bit closer, and maybe I can just get one place ahead of you there. But it's just abysmal, and it's just, you do wonder what the hell's going on there, because you can't, Mercedes were having a bad weekend, but you can't blame it all on the car when it comes to Bottas' race.
It was a bad weekend for Mercedes when we had Lewis Hamilton almost clinched a win, or he's going to get a podium at least, which, yeah, a bad weekend. But Harry, Bottas is having a bad season. What's going on?
Well, it's his worst season start ever for Mercedes, which is not what he needed by any means. But in his defense, they had a higher downforce rear wing compared to Hamilton, which left him a bit, didn't have as much straight line speed. Bottas is struggling still to get the tires warmed up, especially on the restart, which saw him, be a bit of sitting duck, really, and he said he hasn't got the answers to those questions. But you are right, Thiemo. That can't be happening for Bottas, and that shouldn't be happening for him in that team.
So it's the kind of thing, if he was a rookie or second year, you'd forgive it. But 5 seasons at Mercedes alone, never mind an F1, and it's just, how long do we keep making excuses for you?
I do agree, and he can't be having those races, but I just suspect that there's got to be something else there, because Baku, that's that long straight as well, without having, compared to Hamilton not having that skinnier rear wing as well, and you are a bit of a sitting duck, especially on the longest straight of the year, So how much was out of his hands, we'll never truly know. But Bottas,
Kimi got him in an Alfa Romeo, that's all I'll say.
But there is the risk of, you said to me, at least Hamilton was trying something there. I wouldn't say he was trying something. He got a clean start off the side of the grid, accidentally got scared when Perez moved over, flicked the magic switch and off he went, So it was a mistake.
Well, if you believe that there's a button that just cuts your brakes off, it's a bit too convenient the excuse, but that's Mercedes, I think.
Did I hit the button that means the car can't brake? Yeah, you did. Oh man, sorry. But what's the bigger question to ask actually is that this is a second consecutive race where Mercedes have not been the top dogs, and this is not a Mercedes dominated season, which is what we've all been screaming for the last 7 years, and it's funny, I do find it hilarious. I was watching Formula One through and through the Vettel Red Bull years, where everybody hated them and everybody hated their dominance. Now people love the fact that Red Bull are up there. Oh my God, Vettel on the podium. Yeah, we all love Vettel. And you think Formula One's such a fickle world with these people, but it is true. We don't like seeing domination, particularly what Mercedes have had. And that's the biggest question we have to ask. What's happened at Mercedes? What's gone wrong for them in terms of two street circuits, arguably very different characteristically, but 2 races in a row where they have not been up to scratch with either car?
Let's go, speaking of bad luck and my suspicions of where we're going to go with this, with our top 3 and bottom 3, fellas. Harry, your top 3 Formula 2 drivers, please.
Oh, yes. So my top 3 F2 drivers are Shwartzman, Vips, and maybe you'll think, why is he suddenly putting this guy in? I'm going to put Ticktum in there as well, because it was a stronger weekend for him and consistent. So that's why he's in my top 3.
I don't blame you at all for putting Ticktum in there at all. I think he showed that first race in particular exactly why you should put him up there. How about yourself, Thiemo?
Top 3 for me: Boschung, Shwartzman, and Vips.
Boschung, Schwartzman, and Vips. Well, I'm going to almost steal both of you because I've got Boschung, Tictum, and Vips. So no need to explain yourself at all, Harry. With certain Dan Tictum, I'm right on board with you there. But yeah, I think they're pretty. Yeah, shout out to Ralph, and if you want to join the fan club, drop me a DM because he's ace, he's bay. But yeah, Vips, Shwartzman, Tictum, all well deserving to be in there as well. But bottom three, we'll go straight to you again, Harry.
So in my bottom three, I'm putting. This was hard. This was harder, actually, really hard. So, and I felt a bit bad for some of them, but so I put Roy Nissany in my bottom three. I put Guan Yu Zhou, and I put Christian Lundgaard in my bottom three. Because I don't think all three of them had weekends that were not good enough for either of them. Nissany for very different reasons. I hold Zhou and Lundgaard to a higher caliber.
How about you, Thiemo? Your bottom three?
Deleda, and then again a little bit harsh, but again compared to normal. So, oh no, I'm not thinking of Lawson. Who am I thinking? Maybe Lawson actually, just because the bad luck, not necessarily his fault, but if Harry's using Lundgaard, then I'm using Lawson. And then I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons and say Tictum as well for that incident.
I completely disagree on the Tictum one, and I think Harry, of course, does as well.
Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, I think you missed a trick, Harry, because Deleda with the blue flags was he's woeful again. In short,
to me, it just seems too obvious to put Deleda.
I know what you mean.
His exit from sprint race one, I was like, what did you even? You just pulled off. What happened there?
Yeah,
just stop racing.
Well, I want to speak about the my other. I don't want to speak about because we're going to run out of time. But I've also got Samaya as one of my bottom drivers because the only time I actually saw him was reversing. I think several times, at least twice on the weekend, reversing out of the escape roads, which we see plenty in practice, but you don't want to see it in the race. I know we saw Mazepin and Hamilton doing it and Sainz in F1, but we didn't see too many drivers cocking up into those escape roads. And also Lundgaard, because of those higher standards we mentioned. He struggled in qualifying, which, as we're seeing, is scuppering everybody's races. So qualifying, so key and a big struggle. I'm going to speed through these ones again. So I'll go first with my top three from F1. Vettel, Gasly and Perez. I wonder why. So I don't think we could really argue with that. And you could pick a bunch of drivers. Harry, how about you?
I've gone with Verstappen, Perez, and Leclerc.
Leclerc, yeah. Another pole position, 2 in a row. I can see your reasoning there. Thiemo?
Perez, Gasly, and Alonso.
Yeah. He did well, didn't he? Was it 6th that I think he finished in the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some nice overtakes as well, which is like, okay, come on. A bit more
big benefitter from that standing start.
Yeah, he and Vettel both showing that they aren't has-beens, and really good to see. Now, we might have a consistent person amongst our bottom three. I'm going to start it off. We've got Valtteri Bottas for obvious reasons. And I really struggled in this one, actually. So I looked into qualifying and I went for Stroll and Giovinazzi. And Stroll had to go for this strategy because of him crashing out in qualifying. And he wasn't the only one. Giovinazzi was another one. And those are the two I had to go for, but solely because of qualifying. Harry?
Yeah, I was in a similar vein. I was very tempted to put Giovinazzi in as well because he had showed quite good pace, but his race was strong. I thought, but I'll speed through it. So bottom three, I went for Mazepin, Bottas, and I actually put Sainz in there. I thought he had a scrappy weekend and made too many mistakes for a Ferrari driver.
Too many mistakes for a Ferrari driver. Yeah, if Perez is settling in, then Sainz should be settling in as well. But yeah, we did get that podium last time out, but it's a whole new weekend. Thiemo, your bottom three F1 drivers.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Haas's number 2 driver, Mercedes number 2 driver and all Bottas. And yeah, it's tricky. I was trying to decide between Giovinazzi and Sainz because Giovinazzi did for the qualifying, but then Sainz should have been able to get past Giovinazzi so much quicker in the race, and he was just there for ages. I'm there thinking, what's going on there? So 50-50 split for them. I think they can both they can join that bit of the podium that no one wants to be on together.
We've had teams before in our top three, bottom three, but I don't think we've actually had a 50-50 split. So that's a brand new one. But what a great place to end things. Now, Thiemo, where can people find you on the internet this week?
Well, they can find me on GP Grandstand, of course. They can also find me over on Drive Tribe, on YouTube, on my own YouTube channel, which is just my name, and then on Instagram at t.albers.daily.drivetribe.
And those links will be on your screen or in the show notes. Harry, how about yourself?
You can find me on all the social medias if you just search I'm Harry Benjamin. And you could also look up Motormouth as well, our podcast, the Motormouth podcast. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
And you'll also be able to find Harry commentating on the Porsche cars if you're into that sort of thing, tin tops. I mean, some people feel like have to do it, don't they, Harry?
Hey. It's very good. I'm actually in Spa next weekend for GTs and what was Spanish Formula 3, Euro Formula. So if you want to give that,
I hope the weather's terrible.
On YouTube. Yes, well, did you see the flooding there?
Underwater, right?
Yeah.
Nuts. Yeah, well, I hope it's all recovered by the time you get there, Harry. But yeah, excellent news, and continue going on and on upwards. And hopefully we'll get to speak to you later in the season again. As for myself, you can find my work on gpgrandstand.com, of course, as well as fortlock.com. For my satire F1 news, search the F1 week that was on YouTube. And of course, I'm on Grand Prix Grandstand TV doing the F1 podcast, as well as doing driver interviews in our In the Grandstand series. Thank you for listening to us talking F1 once again. And we will be back speaking F1 for the first of a triple header in France. So keep your ears peeled for that one.